Hey everyone, PushingUpRoses here. Now, if you've spent a moderate amount of time on my channel or have read my shitty tweets on Twitter, you'll have learned that I'm a huge mystery buff. Agatha Christie is my goddess. I spend a lot of time reading the classics, but still pick up a modern mystery novel every now and then, and my favorite viewing pleasures are Murder, She Wrote, Columbo, Law & Order, and Sherlock. This interest in mystery, particularly of the murderous type, bleeds right into video games. I'm always looking for a murder mystery game that churns my butter. The Lurabeau games are up there as some of my favorites that I think work relatively well, as are the Nancy Drew games and LA Noire, but it's hard to hit that sweet spot. Contradiction, Spot the Liar, developed by former video game composer Tim Fallon, was suggested to me by a friend not long ago, and man oh man, I am sad this slipped past my radar. I'm going to try to keep this review spoiler-free, but since I'm showing some visuals, there will obviously be some minor ones. Contradiction's plot is as follows. Kate Vine is found dead in a lake with a high amount of morphine in her blood system. People claim she had emotional and mental issues and assume it was a suicide, but it's clearly not. It's a murder mystery game, of course it's murder. Beyond the obvious suspicious characters to interrogate, like some of Kate's peers, there is also a weird company named Atlas involved, which people say is conducting unethical practices and may have participated in Kate's murder. Assigned to the case is the gangling, somewhat offbeat Inspector Jenks. He reminds me a little of Columbo. Some of his mannerisms and tone while speaking are comparable to me, but overall this role has the potential to become a unique detective character with more development.
So, you said Kate gave you £20 for a breakage, but you didn't have a breakage.
That's right.
Do you think the payment could have been for the broken window?
As Jenks, you hop from place to place in the British town of Edenton Village, talking to leads, collecting inventory and statements, and using the data you collect to catch people in lies. Let's start with the positives. FMV games have not exactly been known for having decent acting or sharp editing. They've always needed improvement in many areas. The developers seem to recognize what made FMV games, quote, bad and fixed it. The quality of the video is surprisingly crisp, and the editing is smooth, void of awkward pauses we're used to seeing in FMV games. The interactions are natural, even with Jenks' emphatic gesticulations and kooky facial expressions.
Ever seen this before?
No, should I have?
No, it's okay.
Another notable improvement from previous FMV games are the transitions. Man, I remember playing Gabriel Knight 2: The Beast Within, and every transition cutscene took a million years. These are much quicker and much nicer to look at. They're terse and to the point, and the game never drags you through superfluous scenes that just waste time. I was expecting this game to be way more corny because there is some exaggerated and campy acting, but for the most part it's very convincing. Especially with Jenks, whom you assume simply has a quirky personality, as opposed to bad acting that just happened to make him look quirky. I found everyone pretty grounded in reality, save for a few nitpicky things, like this character who has been drinking from the same shot of whiskey for the past 6 hours or so, and the fact that Jenks doesn't have a cell phone and constantly uses this phone booth to call the chief. This isn't a nitpick, but I do feel the need to point out that this character could have easily been played by Alan Rickman, so perfectly stoic and unmoved.
Shouldn't it be in an evidence bag, Inspector, in case of contamination?
I didn't have one with me, unfortunately.
Well, don't go testing it for DNA, will you? It's got yours all over it.
I loved conversing with this guy as he was so evil and snide during every conversation. I was entertained. Alongside the well-acted characters is the quaint but awesome setting. I want to live in this town. I also enjoy the main gameplay mechanic, collecting information from people which is stored in your notebook, then finding the contradictory statements. This is how you move the game along. You cannot cross-reference character statements, which I thought was a little weird, but it would absolutely make the data overwhelming and cluttered, so I'm glad you find the lies within each individual character's statements. I find this to be a satisfying way to make a murder mystery game because it makes you feel like you are the one solving the crime. There's a great emphasis on observation and less emphasis on inventory object puzzles, in which there are only a few, and I really preferred it that way. Actually, if you're not a fan of cheesy or mystery things like Murder, She Wrote or FMV games akin to Gabriel Knight 2 or The Black Dahlia, then I think it might be safe to say that this is not the title for you. I still encourage people to give it a shot, but those are the reasons I personally enjoyed Contradiction. I was hooked immediately and I felt so engaged that I played the entire game through, unable to put it down. For me, it took around 7.5 hours, which I find to be pretty long for an FMV game. It may take you longer or shorter depending on how quickly you figure out the contradictions. I found them to be easy to moderate, but keep in mind that I do eat, sleep, and breathe murder mystery content, so I feel like I have this innate ability to solve puzzles. I will say this though, I always felt so proud of myself whenever I figured out a contradiction. It feels so rewarding to catch someone in a lie, even if that someone is fictional. Those aha moments are quite fun. Another smart move was making the entire game live action. The FMV games I'm used to often have real people against bizarrely contrasting computer-generated backgrounds. It rarely looked appealing to me. Contradiction has real settings, which makes it feel way more realistic, and for me personally, just nicer to look at. There have been some divisive comments about the user interface, so let me hop into that. I found that using the mouse controls were pretty easy. I found the menus to be assembled okay. I never felt lost when filtering through my information, and I thought the game was easy to pick up. The keyboard controls, however, were clunky. I can see why people critiqued that aspect. I felt way more comfortable using the mouse controls, so I recommend them when playing. I also had some minor issues with the navigation. I tend to get disoriented when it comes to directions, and I found that I kept misclicking. You can use the map to get to pinned places with just one click, though exploration is necessary to trigger certain scenes and find all of the clues. Jinx has to wrap up this mystery by midnight. There aren't any time constraints, but you do need to complete a certain number of things before you can go to the next hour. As far as I could tell, you cannot fuck up or miss a scene. The game simply won't move on unless you figure out what you need to hour by hour. In a way, that reminded me of the Laura Bow games, which also had an emphasis on time, though Contradiction is way more forgiving and harder to bungle. Much like the murder mystery shows and books I like, this game is full of red herrings and diversions and clues that don't go anywhere. For example, I have asked about Simon's homebrew a gazillion times and nobody really cares.
Have you ever tried Simon's homebrew?
Me? No. I don't like beer. I only drink wine.
Get over yourself, Simon. Nobody wants your shitty beer, okay? This game is very formulaic with a linear story, but that's nothing new for the murder mystery genre. It's very easy to see how certain tropes influence this game, and to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It took elements of murder mystery past and executed them perfectly. Of course there's going to be red herrings, of course there's going to be suspicious characters that don't go anywhere, and those things may be tiresome if the game wasn't so good, but it is. I do unfortunately have to mention something majorly wrong here. I hate doing it because I do like this game, but I must. There aren't any autosaves in this game. Now, I know in the past I've said I don't like autosave and that I prefer to have some slots available. Ideally, I'd like to have both. Autosave in the case of a crash or a game bug, and slots so I can revisit specific parts of the game. Well, for whatever reason, I thought this game did have an autosave feature, and because saving doesn't feel intuitive during gameplay, mainly because I couldn't imagine interrupting what I was doing, I didn't save. That's not the main issue though. The issue is I accidentally clicked the middle mouse button, and without any warning or dialogue box, the game restarted. No save file, no autosave, no warning. What? The middle mouse button shouldn't do dick, in my opinion, let alone restart a game without confirming your decision. I lost about 3 hours of progress. The save options you have are clunky. You only get 2 slots and they're just named Save 1 and Save 2. Because this game is so linear and you can't fuck up, an autosave feature would have been perfect. There's really no reason to not have one. You cannot skip dialogue, so I was unable to powerhouse back to the point I was at previously. Now, usually, this would be a deal breaker for me, but because I was so invested and desperately wanted to keep going, I let it go. The game is still incredibly worth playing, as egregious as that error is, so if you decide to play the game, just keep this in mind. Save early, save often, and don't fucking click that middle mouse button. This game is way more about the journey than the end, but my god, did the end have me begging for a sequel. Predictably, the story left me with a lot of loose ends and questions. I wouldn't go as far to say that I was unhappy with the ending, I just craved more. More janks, more this guy, more weird conspiracy theories, and more contradictions to figure out. This is by far one of the most complete murder mystery adventure games I've ever played, despite some dodgy aspects. Undoubtedly one of the best FMV games I've played in a long time. In fact, it's of such high high caliber that it really doesn't even play like most FMV titles. And sure, some of that is because we have better tech for creating higher quality visuals, but it's mostly execution that makes a great game. Murder mystery isn't attempted very often in the video game industry, and that's because it's challenging to come up with a mechanic that works, gives the player a chance to assume the role of a detective in a more realistic manner, with a story that keeps people interested. But I think the dev overcame these challenges and created a fantastic experience. It could use some tidying up, sure, but despite its shortcomings, I fully embrace it. I recommend giving it a shot, if only to see Jenks talk to everyone he sees about this devil horn / I love you sign. I'll leave you with that now.
If I did this, would that mean anything to you?
It's a devil sign, isn't it? Is that what you're getting at, Inspector?
This is not something you use on the
Of course
course.
it's not something we use on the course, Inspector. I don't even know what that could possibly mean, exactly.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching my review of Contradiction: Spot the Liar. If you've played it, let me know what you think either in the comments or on my Twitter page, where I do in fact tweet about Murder, She Wrote quite frequently. If you like my videos, consider supporting my channel on Patreon, where there are extra perks, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.